AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after a decade of family tension. I, 32F, have always had a complicated relationship with my family, particularly my younger sister, Emily, 29F. Growing up, Emily was always the golden child, perfect grades, perfect behavior, always in the spotlight. I was more independent, rebellious, and often made choices my parents didn't approve of. This dynamic created a lot of tension between us, and though my parents tried to mediate, it never really worked. Over the years, I've distanced myself, moving to another state for work and limiting visits to holidays and major events, often attending reluctantly. About 10 years ago, my parents had a major falling out with me. It started over what they considered my irresponsible lifestyle. I was dating someone they didn't approve of. I had just started a freelance career that didn't provide the stability they wanted, and I had a habit of traveling often. They accused me of being selfish and not caring about family responsibilities. The fight escalated, and my parents decided I needed to earn back their trust before I could fully participate in family events. At the time, I was heartbroken but also frustrated. They were punishing me for living my life differently. Since then, I've kept minimal contact. I call occasionally, send gifts for birthdays or holidays, but I avoid long visits and big family events because the tension always surfaces. My sister, Emily, has never forgiven me for the way things went down, either. She views my distance as me being judgmental or uncaring, even though I've tried to explain that I need space to maintain my mental health. Fast forward to last year, Emily got engaged. At first, I thought I could navigate this without too much drama. I congratulated her, asked about the wedding, and tried to be polite in conversations. However, it quickly became clear that the wedding was going to be a massive family affair, with a very rigid plan and very high expectations. My parents made it clear they expected me to attend, which I knew would be difficult. Emily started sending me wedding updates almost daily. She sent a detailed seating chart, asked me to RSVP for pre-wedding events, and even suggested a wardrobe budget that I found unreasonable. I tried to politely decline the more extravagant parts of the celebration, citing work obligations and prior commitments. My parents pressured me to reconsider, saying it would look bad if I didn't attend and that Emily would be hurt. I explained that I wasn't trying to hurt anyone, but the thought of sitting in a highly charged environment where every action would be scrutinized made me anxious. Then things escalated. Emily sent me a long message, stating that my absence would define the wedding, implying that I didn't love or support her. She even mentioned that she had invited other family members I was estranged from, and that she expected me to act pleasantly for appearances. At this point, I realized that attending would require me to be performative, smiling, making small talk, and pretending that all the past issues never happened. I wasn't sure I could do that without breaking down or creating a scene. After a lot of internal debate, I made the decision not to attend. I sent a carefully worded message explaining my reasoning, that I value my relationship with her, but attending under these circumstances would be emotionally harmful to me. I apologized for any disappointment and emphasized that this wasn't a lack of love. I also mentioned that I would be happy to celebrate with her privately at another time. The response was immediate and harsh. My parents were furious, claiming I was selfish and overreacting. Emily sent a follow-up message calling me toxic and accusing me of ruining family relationships. She said that my absence would be noticed and remembered, and that I was proving that I could never be trusted as a sister. I tried to stay calm, reiterating my reasoning, but they continued to escalate, saying that I was creating drama where none needed to exist. Since then, family communications have essentially stopped. I've received passive-aggressive texts from my parents asking if I'm going to send a gift or attend any related events. Emily has posted multiple photos from pre-wedding parties, tagging everyone except me. Mutual friends of the family have reached out, expressing confusion and asking me to make peace, but I'm not sure how to reconcile without sacrificing my mental health. I've been second-guessing myself constantly. On one hand, I feel justified. I've spent years trying to maintain boundaries, and attending the wedding would have been overwhelming and emotionally damaging. On the other hand, I feel guilty for not participating in what is supposed to be a major life event for my sister. Part of me wonders if my absence will permanently damage our relationship. I'm trying to navigate this carefully. I've sent gifts, written heartfelt letters, and tried to maintain contact outside of the wedding, but I can't seem to escape the feeling that I'm being judged as cold or uncaring. The pressure from my family and the backlash from Emily has been intense. I genuinely want a relationship with my sister, but I'm terrified that attending the wedding would result in either a dramatic scene or me shutting down completely, creating resentment on both sides. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after years of family tension, prioritizing my emotional health over family expectations, even though I know it has hurt her and my parents. I feel trapped between doing what's healthiest for me and what my family expects of me, and I'm not sure where the balance lies. Has anyone else had to make this kind of choice? And how did you handle the aftermath without completely burning bridges? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to attend my brother's wedding after what happened last year. I, 32F, have always been close to my family, especially my younger brother, Jake, 29M. We grew up in a tight-knit family in a small town, and until recently, we were extremely close. Our parents divorced when I was 12, and I took on a lot of responsibilities helping my mom raise my younger siblings. Jake and I have always had a strong bond, but our relationship has become complicated, and I'm struggling with what my role should be going forward. Last year, my parents invited me to their summer cabin for a week-long vacation. I had been busy with work and was really looking forward to the time away. Jake and his fiancée, Mia, 28F, were also supposed to come, along with a few of our cousins. The first day went fine, but things started to go downhill quickly. Mia has always had a tendency to dominate social situations and has a very controlling personality. She's also extremely competitive and seems to need to be the center of attention all the time. I had met her a few times before and got along with her well enough, but during this trip, her behavior was off the charts. She immediately started trying to assert herself as the planner of everything at the cabin, from meals to excursions. I didn't think much of it at first, but the tension began to build when she started criticizing the way I cooked breakfast. I had been making pancakes for everyone, which I've been making since I was a teenager and was considered a family favorite, but she loudly said, "These are way too thick. No one likes pancakes that are like rocks." I was taken aback because not only was it unnecessary, but she completely disregarded that I had been cooking for decades and that this was a tradition. I tried to brush it off and suggested we make them thinner next time. She then insisted on taking over the kitchen entirely, moving all my ingredients around and telling me what I could and couldn't use. I told her I wasn't comfortable with her changing things that had been part of family traditions for years, but she insisted, saying, "I just think we should modernize a little." At this point, Jake chimed in to support her. He said, "Come on, it's just pancakes. Let her do it her way." I felt completely invalidated, and my sense of being welcomed at the family cabin vanished. The next day, we went on a hike. Mia kept criticizing my choice of gear, my pace, and even my stamina. At one point, she loudly commented that I shouldn't have packed certain items because someone with more experience could have done it better. I was furious and told her to stop, but Jake again sided with her, saying, "You're being dramatic. It's not a big deal." Later that evening, during a dinner that I had helped prepare, she criticized the plating and presentation of my food and made jokes about it being Instagram-worthy while rolling her eyes at me. I ended up leaving the table because I felt humiliated and completely unwelcome. It didn't end there. Over the course of the week, Mia started taking over more activities. She scheduled games, outings, and even decided what TV shows we could watch. When I tried to suggest something, she would either ignore me or dismiss it with a condescending laugh. My brother, who normally would have stepped in or at least mediated, started laughing along with her or shrugging me off. By the end of the week, I was in tears multiple times and felt like an outsider in what was supposed to be a family retreat. The breaking point came on the last night. We were sitting around the fire, and I wanted to have a moment to reminisce about family memories and talk about past vacations with my brother. Mia interrupted constantly, turning the conversation to her accomplishments, trips she had taken, and projects she had done. I tried to express that I wanted to share something meaningful, but she waved me off and said, "This is a celebration, not a history lesson." Jake laughed along with her. At that point, I stood up and said I was going for a walk to cool off, but Mia followed me outside and continued berating me for being overly sensitive and making the vacation about yourself. I ended up leaving the cabin in tears and drove back home that night, leaving my family stunned. After that incident, I took some time away from my family to process what happened. I spoke to a therapist who helped me realize that I had been dismissing my feelings for years and that my brother had consistently prioritized his fiancée over me in ways that hurt. I tried to discuss this with Jake, telling him how hurtful it had been to feel sidelined and criticized during what should have been a family vacation. His response was that Mia was just passionate and that I needed to lighten up. I felt like my feelings were completely invalidated again, and we haven't been particularly close since. Fast forward to now, Jake is getting married in a few months, and my parents and other family members have been pressuring me to attend. My initial reaction was to say yes, as I didn't want to cause family drama. But the closer the wedding gets, the more I realize I simply do not want to be around Mia in such an intimate setting. I have no interest in pretending everything is okay, and I don't want to endure the same humiliation or feeling of being sidelined in front of everyone again. I spoke to my parents about it, explaining that I felt unsafe and uncomfortable around Mia and that attending the wedding would be emotionally taxing. They were upset and said I was being unreasonable, calling me selfish for potentially missing a family event. Jake reacted similarly, telling me I should get over last year and that it's just a wedding, not another competition. I explained that it's not about grudges, but about protecting my mental health and setting boundaries with someone who has repeatedly disrespected me. I have since decided I will not be attending the wedding. I plan to send a heartfelt card and a gift, but I am firm in my choice. My extended family is divided. Some say I have every right to protect my mental health, while others think I am overreacting and that I am burning bridges with my brother. I feel relief at the thought of not attending, but also sadness because it means missing a significant event in my family. I have tried to compromise, considered attending only the ceremony or staying on the outskirts, but I know I would end up feeling resentful and possibly causing a scene. So, AITA for refusing to attend my brother's wedding because of the way his fiancée treated me last year and the lack of support for my brother. I feel like I'm standing up for myself, but I worry that I may be seen as dramatic or overly sensitive. This situation has strained my family relationships, and I'm struggling to figure out whether my decision is justified. AITA for confronting my sister over her behavior at our family reunion and causing a huge fallout. Last month, our extended family organized a reunion at my parents' house, which hadn't happened in over 5 years due to various circumstances, including the pandemic. I, along with my siblings and cousins, was very excited to see everyone. I live about 2 hours away, and I made a big effort to clear my schedule for the weekend and help with preparations. I wanted this reunion to be a time of joy and connection, not tension. My sister, Emily, is a very successful corporate lawyer and always comes across as confident and assertive, which is great in her professional life, but sometimes comes off as domineering in family settings. She also has a habit of turning conversations toward herself or her achievements. Our parents adore her, and honestly, I'm proud of her success. But over the years, it has occasionally led to friction because she tends to dismiss or overshadow others' experiences, whether intentionally or not. On the first day of the reunion, things were going relatively smoothly. Everyone was catching up, sharing stories, and laughing. I was particularly excited to see my younger cousins, who are teenagers now and had changed so much since the last reunion. Emily arrived in the late afternoon. As soon as she walked in, The energy in the room shifted slightly. She began recounting her recent international business trips and projects in a very detailed manner. At first, it was interesting, but as the evening went on, she dominated most of the conversation. I tried to engage her and others in discussions, asking about everyone's work, hobbies, and life updates. But Emily often interrupted or redirected the conversation back to her accomplishments. It was subtle at first, just small interruptions or dismissive comments, but it escalated over dinner. My parents were trying to keep things calm, smiling and nodding, but I could sense the growing frustration from some of the cousins. After dinner, while we were all relaxing in the living room, Emily started criticizing some of my cousins' career choices in a way that felt unnecessarily harsh. She made comments like, "Oh, that's cute, but you really should consider something more serious if you want to succeed, and that's not going to get you anywhere in the real world." She directed these remarks at my younger cousins, who looked visibly uncomfortable. I could see them shrinking in their seats, and I realized no one was defending them because my parents tend to avoid conflict. At that point, I decided I couldn't stay quiet. I took a deep breath and said, "Emily, I think you're being a little harsh. These are people we care about, and they're happy with the paths they've chosen. You don't need to put them down to prove yourself." She looked surprised, and for a moment, there was silence. Then she laughed and said, "Oh, come on, I'm just giving them reality checks. They need to hear the truth." I replied firmly, "There's a difference between being honest and being dismissive or condescending. You can encourage without belittling." At this point, Emily's expression changed. She stood up, clearly offended, and said, "I can't believe you're calling me out in front of everyone. This is ridiculous. You're acting like a child." I tried to stay calm and explain that I wasn't trying to embarrass her, but I felt the behavior was inappropriate for a family gathering. My parents intervened and asked us to calm down, but Emily refused to engage and stormed off to her room, slamming the door. The next day, tension was palpable. Some family members were clearly upset about the confrontation, but no one knew exactly how to act. Emily barely came out of her room, and when she did, she gave everyone cold, short answers. She later sent me a long text accusing me of humiliating her in front of the family, saying I was jealous of her success and trying to make her feel small. She insisted that I should have handled it privately, and that I had no right to lecture her. I responded that my intention was not to humiliate her, but to speak up for family members who were being put down, and that I felt it was appropriate to do so at the moment since the behavior was affecting everyone. I also said I understood she felt embarrassed, but that doesn't change that her words were hurtful. She replied with a one-word text, "Whatever." Since then, the atmosphere in the family has been strained. Some cousins thanked me privately, saying they were glad someone stood up for them, but others are now wary and have expressed that I caused unnecessary drama. My parents are caught in the middle, uncomfortable, and have asked me to apologize to Emily to smooth things over. But I feel conflicted because I do not think I did anything wrong by standing up against condescending behavior. I've been replaying the incident in my mind, questioning whether I should have handled it differently. Should I have waited and spoken to her privately later, as she suggested? But at the same time, I feel like confronting in the moment was necessary to protect the feelings of my cousins and to prevent her behavior from escalating further. I'm now facing a dilemma. Some family members are subtly blaming me for ruining the reunion and saying I overreacted. Emily hasn't spoken to me directly since the confrontation, and I feel like the dynamic has shifted permanently. I wonder if I should have remained silent and let her continue making comments, or if speaking up was the right thing to do. So, AITA for confronting my sister over her behavior during the reunion and causing a family fallout, even though I was trying to defend my cousins and maintain a positive environment. AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend stay in my house after an argument over boundaries. So, I, 28F, live in a 2-bedroom apartment in a mid-sized city. I share with my roommate, Alex, 30M, who is basically like family to me at this point. We've been living together for almost 3 years, and we have a pretty good system. Chores, bills, social visits, everything is pretty well balanced. I like my space, and I've always been clear about personal boundaries, both with Alex and my family. My younger sister, Lily, 24F, has been dating her boyfriend, Mark, 27M, for about a year now. I've met Mark a few times, and he seemed fine, a little overbearing sometimes, but generally polite. Lily, Mark, and I have a decent relationship, but it's complicated because Mark tends to overstep boundaries, and I've been trying to be patient with that. A few weeks ago, Lily called me asking if she and Mark could come over for dinner. I agreed, told Alex, and made sure the apartment would be presentable. Dinner was fine, but during the night, Mark kept making comments about how I don't entertain enough and never host anyone. I ignored it mostly because Lily looked embarrassed, and I didn't want to start drama during dinner. After dinner, I told him I needed to clean up and that it was getting late, but Mark insisted he would help. I let him, though I was already a little irritated. While I was putting dishes away, he started making more comments about my apartment, my choices, and even about Alex. I told him politely that I didn't appreciate those comments and that it was time to leave. Lily seemed uncomfortable, but she didn't say much. Fast forward 2 days later, Lily messages me saying Mark wants to stay at my apartment for a few days because his place is being fumigated. I told her honestly that I wasn't comfortable with that. I explained that my space is shared with Alex, and we weren't prepared to host anyone for multiple days, especially someone who had been disrespectful. Lily got upset and said I was being unfair and dramatic, and that Mark was just trying to stay somewhere safe. I stuck to my guns, saying it wasn't personal, but I couldn't compromise my boundaries. Then came the text from Mark himself. He started guilt-tripping me, saying I don't care about family, that I could at least be hospitable, and that people who are too rigid about boundaries are lonely. I ignored the text, thinking it was best not to respond. Lily called me, crying, saying that I was breaking her heart and that I didn't care about Mark's situation. I tried to reason with her, but she kept saying I was selfish and that our relationship was never going to be the same because I refused to let Mark stay. Here's where things escalated. A few days later, Mark apparently showed up at my building unannounced. Alex was home and told him politely that he wasn't allowed inside. Mark argued, saying that Lily had told him I would let him stay and that I was being unreasonable. Alex and Mark ended up arguing at the door for a few minutes until Mark left. I felt a mix of anger, violation, and anxiety. My boundaries had been completely ignored. I talked to Lily again, trying to explain that this wasn't about Mark as a person. It was about respecting my space and my rules. I also told her that coming to the apartment unannounced was crossing a line. Lily said I was overreacting and making Mark out to be a villain, and that she couldn't believe I was choosing boundaries over family. I tried to stay calm, but it hurt hearing that from my own sister. After that, I blocked Mark from calling or texting me and explained to Lily that if she wanted to visit, she was welcome, but Mark was not allowed in my home. Lily hasn't spoken to me much since then. A few mutual friends have reached out, saying I might have been too harsh and that Mark was just in a tough spot. I don't see it that way, but I'm starting to question whether I'm being too rigid. My roommate, Alex, is fully on my side. He says our apartment, our rules, and our safety come first, and he supports me setting boundaries. He also pointed out that if I had let Mark stay after the incident at dinner and his comments, it could have caused ongoing tension and discomfort in our home. I'm starting to feel guilty because I know Lily is upset, and I hate that this is affecting our relationship. But at the same time, I feel like my boundaries are being disregarded, and allowing Mark to stay would have made me extremely uncomfortable. I also don't want to reward someone who came to my home uninvited and argued with my roommate. So AITA here, am I wrong for refusing to let Mark stay, even though his situation seems difficult and it's causing tension with my sister? I feel like I'm defending my space and my sanity, but my family sees it differently, and it's making me doubt myself. I want to maintain a relationship with Lily, but I don't want to compromise my boundaries, especially when Mark has already demonstrated that he might not respect them. I also don't want to escalate things further, but I can't ignore the violation of my home and personal space. I know family can be complicated, but I honestly feel like protecting my own home and mental health should come first. Still, the guilt is gnawing at me because I don't want to lose my sister over this. Has anyone else dealt with a similar situation? How do you balance family obligations with personal boundaries, especially when a family member's partner is overstepping? I'm looking for honest perspectives, even if they're harsh, because I need to know whether I'm being unreasonable or if I'm justified in standing firm. AITA for refusing to let my younger sister's fiancé stay in my house during his transition period, even though it's causing tension in the family. I, 32M, live in a modest two-bedroom apartment in the city. I work full-time in IT and generally keep a pretty low-profile life. My younger sister, Emily, 28F, has always been the social, outgoing type, and she's been dating her fiancé, Mark, 30M, for about 4 years. Recently, things got complicated. Mark recently lost his job due to company downsizing and has been struggling financially. Emily suggested he move in with me temporarily while he gets back on his feet because, according to her, it would be easier for him to save money and avoid eviction from his current apartment. She phrased it as a short-term solution, maybe a month or two, until he stabilizes. I said I needed to think about it. I have lived alone for the past 8 years and value my privacy immensely. My apartment is small, and I have a strict routine. I work late, I have hobbies that involve a lot of focus and solitude, and honestly, I just enjoy my own space. I also have a cat who is very particular about visitors. Having a stranger in my home, even temporarily, felt invasive. When I told Emily that I was uncomfortable with the idea and that I could not host Mark, she was initially understanding but then started pushing harder. She kept saying, "It's just a month," or "I'll be there most of the time anyway," or "It would really help him." I tried explaining my boundaries clearly. My apartment is not suitable for guests for an extended stay, and having someone live here would disrupt my mental health and routines. She then said, "If you loved me, you'd help out," which made me feel guilty. I offered some alternatives. I suggested Mark could stay in a short-term rental, or even with some friends in the city who had guest rooms. I also offered to help him look for employment and help financially if necessary. Emily insisted that none of these options were as convenient or safe as my apartment. She even mentioned that our parents would be disappointed if I didn't help. Last weekend, Emily showed up at my door unexpectedly. She wanted to talk in person, and she brought Mark with her. He was polite, but I could feel the tension rising. Emily started emotionally pressuring me again, saying that Mark had nowhere else to go and that I was being unreasonable. I told her again that I couldn't accommodate him, no matter what, and that it was not fair to either of us to try. I offered to take him out for lunch and help with job applications, but she said it wasn't enough. The situation escalated when she brought up our parents. According to Emily, they were already questioning why I wouldn't help, and she suggested I was being selfish. Mark didn't say much, but Emily was clearly upset. I ended up asking them to leave because I felt cornered and anxious. Since then, Emily has barely spoken to me except for occasional texts, most of which accuse me of being heartless and selfish. My parents have called, somewhat cautiously, to ask if I'm sure I won't reconsider, implying that I should help my sister and her fiancé. I feel caught in the middle. I want to support my sister, but I also need to maintain my boundaries. Some friends have told me I'm being too rigid and that family means helping each other out, especially in times of need. Others have said that I'm justified because I have every right to protect my living space and mental health. I know my sister and her fiancé are in a difficult situation, but I also feel that my home is my sanctuary, and hosting someone for an undefined period would be detrimental to my well-being. I'm also worried about the future. If I give in now, it could set a precedent where Emily expects me to host her and Mark anytime they encounter financial issues. I'm aware that family obligations are important, but I've also been taught that consent and boundaries matter. I try to offer support in ways that don't involve having someone live with me, like helping with job hunting and temporary financial assistance, but it seems like that's not sufficient in their eyes. I want to keep my relationship with Emily intact, but her insistence and the pressure from our parents are making it extremely stressful. Every time I think about letting him stay, I feel anxiety and dread. I also don't want to become resentful toward Emily or Mark. I've been trying to be firm but empathetic, but it hasn't worked. I've thought about compromising, like letting him stay in a hotel nearby with my financial help, or even helping him find a sublet, but Emily insists that it's not the same as staying with me. She argues that I'm throwing away family values and choosing convenience over love, which feels manipulative. I also worry that if I let Mark stay, my apartment would be cluttered and noisy, my routines disrupted, and my cat stressed. I've tried explaining all of this calmly, but my sister interprets it as selfishness. It's gotten to the point where I'm questioning whether our relationship will survive this disagreement. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiance stay in my apartment during this difficult period, even though it's causing tension in the family. I've tried to support them in other ways, but apparently that's not enough, and I'm worried that standing firm is making me the villain in my family's eyes. AITA for not letting my younger brother stay at my house after his relationship ended. So, a bit of context first. I, 32M, have lived in my own apartment for about 6 years now. I work from home as a software developer, which means I spend most of my days inside, and honestly, I really value my space and quiet. My younger brother, Liam, 28M, has always been a bit more free-spirited. He's had a string of short-term relationships and usually bounces around different friends' places when things go south. He's charming, funny, and generally well-liked. But he also has a tendency to make messes, stay late, and generally disrupt the routines of others without meaning any harm. A few weeks ago, Liam called me crying because his latest breakup was particularly rough. He said he and his girlfriend had been together for almost 3 years, and things ended very abruptly. He was emotional, saying he didn't want to be alone and asking if he could stay at my place for a little while. I felt bad for him. I really did. But I also knew my life has very little margin for chaos. My apartment is small, I work from home, and I really need structure to manage my own mental health. I hesitated and tried to explain that I couldn't host him indefinitely. I offered an alternative. I could help him find a short-term rental, or I could pay for a few nights at a nearby Airbnb so he had space to process things without me being overwhelmed. He wasn't thrilled about it, but agreed, and I thought that would be the end of it. Fast forward a few days, Liam shows up at my apartment unannounced. He says he couldn't find a place quickly enough and needed somewhere to crash for a night. I reluctantly let him in, thinking one night wouldn't hurt. That night was fine, but the next morning he started treating my apartment as his own. He left dirty dishes in the sink, used my expensive coffee without asking, and was generally loud while I was trying to concentrate on a big project. I reminded him that this was temporary and that he needed to respect my space. He apologized, but didn't seem to take it seriously. Over the next week, it got worse. He started leaving clothes everywhere, borrowing things without asking, and generally acting like he had moved in permanently. I tried to set boundaries again. I told him very clearly that I could not have him staying with me longer than a few days, and that he needed to find another solution immediately. I even offered to drive him to some hostels or short-term rentals. He started getting defensive, saying that I was not being a good brother and abandoning him when he needed family the most. He said he couldn't handle being alone and begged me to reconsider. I stayed firm, but it was very uncomfortable. I ended up having to spend several evenings at a friend's place just to get a break from the tension at my own home. The breaking point came when he had a small gathering of a couple of friends I didn't know without asking me in my living room. They were loud, and the noise disrupted a work meeting I had with a client. I walked in, asked everyone to leave politely but firmly, and Liam erupted. He yelled at me, saying that I was cold, selfish, and uncaring, and that I didn't understand how difficult his life was right now. I explained that this was not about being uncaring. It was about boundaries and respect, but he refused to listen. He eventually left that night, but the damage had been done. Afterwards, I blocked him from visiting without notice and sent him a text explaining that I loved him and wanted to support him, but my apartment is my workspace and sanctuary. I offered again to help him find temporary accommodation, but I would not be hosting him. He sent me a long text calling me cruel, heartless, and unsympathetic. He also implied that I was prioritizing my comfort over family obligations, which made me feel guilty, though I also knew he had crossed clear boundaries repeatedly. Since then, my parents have gotten involved. They think I should have been more brotherly, and that I was being too rigid. My friends are divided. Some say I absolutely have a right to protect my space and that Liam was being manipulative, while others say family should always come first in times of emotional crisis. I feel stuck. On one hand, I love my brother and want to support him, but on the other, I have my own responsibilities, my own mental health, and I just can't have someone living with me indefinitely, especially someone who consistently ignores boundaries. I don't want to lose my relationship with him completely, but I also can't put myself in a position where I'm constantly stressed in my own home. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to let my brother stay at my place after his breakup, despite him pleading for support. AITA for confronting my sister over her parenting choices, even though it caused a huge family rift. 32F, have always been close to my younger sister, Emily, 28F. Growing up, we were inseparable, and even though our personalities are quite different, we've always supported each other. Emily is more spontaneous and carefree, while I'm more structured and cautious. Our parents instilled in us a sense of responsibility, but I guess Emily always leaned more toward enjoying life as it comes, while I internalized a need to plan for every eventuality. Emily got married to her husband, Jason, 30M, about 5 years ago. They seemed happy enough, but I've noticed over time that Emily can sometimes make decisions impulsively, particularly when it comes to her children. They have 2 kids now, Lily, 6F, and Max, 3M. My sister loves them deeply, but I've had growing concerns about some of the choices she makes regarding their upbringing, diet, and safety. It started with little things. For instance, Emily has always been lax about sleep schedules. Lily would go to bed at wildly different times each night, sometimes past 11 p.m., and Max's nap routine is inconsistent at best. I mentioned once, casually, that routines are important for children's development, and Emily brushed it off, saying she didn't want her kids to feel restricted. I let it go because, well, it's her parenting, not mine. Over time, I started noticing other things. Emily frequently gave the kids sugary snacks and fast food for dinner. She rarely enforced limits on screen time, allowing them to watch tablets or TV for hours. I've read a lot about childhood nutrition and development, so seeing her make these choices alarmed me. I try to offer advice subtly, like sending recipes or suggesting fun, healthy activities, but she always responded defensively, claiming she knows what's best for her kids. Things escalated a few months ago. We were visiting my parents for a family gathering, and Emily brought both kids. While everyone was chatting in the living room, Lily suddenly got up and started running around near the staircase. Max followed closely behind. I instinctively moved to grab Lily's arm to prevent a fall, and Emily reacted sharply, saying, "Don't touch my kid. She's fine." I froze for a second because I genuinely thought a serious injury could happen. I didn't want to overstep, but I couldn't ignore it either. Later that evening, I tried to talk to Emily privately. I told her I was worried about the lack of structure and boundaries for the kids, that I wasn't criticizing her as a mother, but I thought she might consider safer routines and limits. Emily immediately became defensive, raising her voice and accusing me of judging her and trying to control her family. The argument ended with her storming out and saying she didn't want to speak to me for a while. The next few weeks were tense. Our parents tried to mediate, reminding us we should respect each other's boundaries, but I honestly felt conflicted. On one hand, it's her children, and she has the right to parent as she sees fit. On the other hand, I saw choices that I genuinely believed were harmful or unsafe, and I couldn't stay silent without feeling complicit. I kept hoping she'd reach out, but she didn't. Then, a few weeks ago, something happened that made me question everything. Emily called, upset because Lily had gotten sick after eating too much candy over the weekend and skipping meals. Max had been running around unsupervised and fell, giving himself a nasty cut. Emily admitted she felt overwhelmed and asked for advice on routines and safety. I gave her practical tips and even offered to help set up a schedule for the kids, but she said she'd try her own way first. However, the situation spiraled quickly. At the next family gathering, Emily announced in front of everyone that she felt I was trying to parent her children and that I had no right to interfere. She implied that my concerns were overbearing and controlling. My parents were visibly uncomfortable, and my extended family seemed divided. Some sided with Emily, saying I was overstepping, while a few quietly agreed with me that the kids could benefit from structure. Emily then refused to let me interact with the kids freely, claiming I might undermine her authority. I tried to apologize for the argument, clarifying that I didn't mean to insult her, only that I was worried about the kids. Emily refused to accept it, and the tension has now reached a point where family events are uncomfortable. I feel like I'm being forced to choose between speaking up for what I genuinely believe is in the children's best interest and maintaining a peaceful relationship with my sister. My friends are divided too. Some say I had no right to confront Emily, that parenting is personal and she has the right to raise her children as she sees fit. Others say I did the right thing by voicing concerns, especially when safety and well-being are involved. I keep thinking about the fall near the staircase and the constant sugar intake, and I honestly feel like if I hadn't said anything, things could have gotten worse. I know my sister loves her kids and thinks she's doing what's best. I also know she's sensitive to criticism, and I worry that my attempts to help have damaged our relationship permanently. I'm not trying to control her life. I'm just scared for her children's health and safety. I feel trapped between wanting to respect her autonomy and wanting to protect the kids. So, AITA for confronting my sister about her parenting choices, knowing it could and did create a rift in the family. AITA for confronting my sister over our parents' inheritance, even though it caused a huge family rift. I, 38F, have always been close to my sister, Jenna, 35F, at least until recently. We grew up in a middle-class household with two loving parents who made many sacrifices for us. Our parents have always been careful with money, and while they never flaunted it, they did leave us a modest inheritance they explicitly wanted us to share equally. Our parents both passed away last year after long illnesses, which left a lot of emotions unresolved in the family. After the initial grief, we began the process of sorting through their estate. This included a house, a small vacation property, savings, and some valuable collectibles. I was surprised when Jenna informed me that she had already transferred the vacation property into her name, claiming that our parents had verbally expressed a wish for her to have it because she had spent the most time there with them in recent years. I was shocked because while our parents had shared their thoughts on who might enjoy certain things, they had never formalized anything. Everything in the will stated that the property should be split equally, and the vacation home was explicitly mentioned as part of that shared estate. I tried to talk to Jenna calmly about this, pointing out that even if our parents had said something in passing, it wasn't legally binding, and I expected her to discuss it with me before making any moves. She argued that she had a moral right to the property and that it wasn't really about the money, but about honoring the time she had spent caring for our parents during their final years. I felt blindsided because I had also been heavily involved in their care, organizing doctor's appointments, managing medications, and even staying overnight at the hospital. She didn't acknowledge any of that, and it felt like she was trying to rewrite history to justify keeping the property for herself. Things escalated when I decided to consult a lawyer to understand my legal options. I wasn't trying to make this a full-blown legal battle initially. I wanted clarity. After explaining the situation to a lawyer, I learned that I had a strong case to demand an equal share, especially since the will and estate documents were clear. I shared this with Jenna, hoping it would encourage a more reasonable discussion. Instead, she accused me of being greedy and claimed I was only thinking about the money. She also started bringing up old family grievances, saying I had always been the favored child and that I didn't understand the sacrifices she had made. At this point, I realized that trying to reason with her privately was going nowhere. I organized a family meeting, including my parents' executor and some extended family members to mediate. I wanted everyone to have a transparent discussion and ideally reach a fair compromise without taking extreme measures. During the meeting, Jenna became very defensive, raising her voice and accusing me of trying to humiliate her in front of everyone. She insisted the vacation property was hers and that if I wanted money, I could take my share in cash, which would be less than half the property's value. She also mentioned that she had already invested in renovations, implying she had put work and money into making it hers. I tried to explain that my intention was not to attack her personally, but to ensure our parents' wishes were honored and that we both received what we were legally entitled to. I suggested selling the property and splitting the proceeds equally, which she flatly refused. After a tense few hours, the meeting ended with no resolution, and Jenna left in tears. Since then, the family atmosphere has completely deteriorated. Other relatives are picking sides, with some saying I should have let her keep the property out of respect for her efforts, and others agreeing that I was right to stand up for what was legally mine. I'm also facing backlash from friends who say I picked a fight during a time of grief, making the inheritance a source of conflict instead of closure. I understand that emotions run high after losing our parents, but I also feel that fairness and transparency should have been prioritized. Jenna has now blocked me on all social media, refuses to answer calls, and has even told some family members that I'm manipulative and greedy. I feel awful that my relationship with my sister might be permanently damaged, but at the same time, I can't ignore what I believe is my right. The property is part of our inheritance, and if she keeps it without proper discussion, it would set a precedent where one sibling can claim whatever they want based on subjective reasoning. I am still open to a peaceful resolution, but Jenna seems unwilling to engage in any rational discussion. I've considered legal action as a last resort, but the thought of escalating this into a bitter lawsuit feels heartbreaking, especially since it could permanently destroy any chance of reconciliation. I've tried explaining that it's not about the money personally. It's about respecting our parents' wishes, but that hasn't helped. So, AITA for confronting Jenna over the vacation property and insisting on splitting the inheritance fairly, even though it caused a massive family conflict. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancée stay at my house after an argument about wedding plans. So I, 32F, have always been the kind of person who likes to have control over my space. I live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment in a busy city, and I take a lot of pride in keeping it clean and organized. My younger brother, Jake, 29M, recently got engaged to his girlfriend, Melissa, 28F. I've known Melissa for a few years, and while she's nice most of the time, she and I have never really clicked. She's a very social, energetic person, while I'm more introverted and value my alone time. A few months ago, Jake and Melissa started talking about their wedding plans. Initially, it was all normal stuff, venue, guest list, catering, but then they started mentioning that they wanted to do a pre-wedding weekend at my apartment. Apparently, some of Melissa's friends wanted to come over, and she thought it would be fun to stay at my place the night before the wedding rehearsal. I was taken aback because my apartment isn't big enough for that many people, and I hadn't planned on hosting anyone, especially strangers, in my home. I told Jake that I didn't think it was a good idea. Jake was understanding at first, but Melissa got upset. She said I was being selfish and unwilling to support her big day. She suggested that it would only be for one night and that I could just sleep in my bedroom while everyone hung out in the living room. I told her that even one night with a bunch of people I didn't know well would be uncomfortable for me, and that I didn't want to risk my belongings or the cleanliness of my space. She rolled her eyes and stormed off, and Jake seemed frustrated, but he didn't push the issue further at that moment. Fast forward a few weeks, and Melissa brought it up again during a family dinner. This time, she framed it as if I had already promised her the space, which was not true. I tried to clarify that I never agreed to anything, and I explained my boundaries politely. Melissa got visibly angry and started raising her voice, saying that I was ruining the family's happiness and that I should learn to compromise for my brother's sake. My parents were there, and they seemed torn. They value my independence, but also didn't want a scene before the wedding. I stood my ground and said no again, and the dinner ended awkwardly. Things escalated a week later. Melissa showed up at my apartment unannounced with a suitcase, claiming that she had spoken to Jake, and he said it was fine. I was shocked because Jake hadn't spoken to me about it, and I didn't feel comfortable having her stay over without my explicit permission. I told her firmly that she could not stay. She started crying and yelling, saying I was the worst sister-in-law ever, and that I should let her stay just this once. I stayed calm and repeated that I had made my boundaries clear. She left, but I could hear her calling Jake on her way out, clearly upset. Jake confronted me later that evening. He said he understood why I didn't want her at my place, but he also felt like I was making things harder for him and Melissa. He asked if I could just make an exception for one night, but I explained that this wasn't about being difficult. It was about my home, my comfort, and my boundaries. He eventually walked away frustrated, but we didn't argue further. A few days later, Melissa sent me a long text detailing why I was selfish and not family-oriented. She also threatened that she wouldn't attend any future family gatherings if I didn't agree to host her for the weekend. I didn't respond. Instead, I blocked her number temporarily because the texts were becoming harassing. I then called Jake to explain why I blocked her, emphasizing that I wasn't trying to start a fight, but needed to protect my mental health. He got upset again, saying that I should have found a compromise and that I was being cold and rigid. My parents got involved after Jake. Called them upset. They told me they understood my perspective, but warned that refusing to host Melissa could cause a rift in the family. I explained that I had already tried to be reasonable and that I couldn't let her dictate how I use my home. They seemed frustrated but eventually dropped it, telling me to try to smooth things over with Melissa later. Now, the situation has reached a point where Melissa refuses to speak to me. Jake is constantly trying to mediate between us, and my parents are subtly pressuring me to be nicer for the sake of the wedding. I've considered apologizing just to ease tension, but I feel like that would mean giving up my boundaries and letting someone invade my space against my will. I also feel guilty because Jake is my brother, and I don't want to cause problems before his wedding, but at the same time, I feel like my home and personal comfort should be respected. Recently, some extended family members have started asking me why I'm being difficult with Melissa, which only adds to the stress. I've had friends tell me I'm in the right for standing up for myself, but I can't shake the feeling that I might be overreacting or causing unnecessary drama in the family. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancée stay at my apartment despite her demands and the pressure from my family. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after what happened last year. I've been struggling with whether I'm being unreasonable, so I'm hoping to get some perspective here. I, 29F, have a younger sister, Emily, 26F, and our relationship has always been complicated. Growing up, we were close in some ways, but our personalities were very different. I'm the more introverted and cautious one, while Emily is outgoing, dramatic, and often demands attention. Our parents have always favored Emily to some extent, which caused tension between us, but I never let it affect my relationship with her too badly, until last year. Last year, Emily got engaged to her now husband, Greg, 30M. I was genuinely happy for her, and I wanted to support her, so when she asked me to be one of her bridesmaids, I agreed. I bought the dress she picked out, made travel arrangements, and blocked off the weekend for her bachelorette party. From the beginning, I tried to be accommodating, even when I didn't feel comfortable with some of the plans. The bachelorette party was the first major issue. Emily had planned a weekend at a rented beach house with a group of her closest friends. She expected all the bridesmaids to participate in everything she planned, which included some very expensive activities, drinking heavily, and staying up all night. I'm not a heavy drinker, and I get anxious in large social settings, so I try to communicate my limits. I told her in advance that I wouldn't be participating in certain activities, like the extreme sports excursion she had booked or the bar crawl that went late into the night. She waved it off, saying, "It won't be the same if you're not all in." I tried to compromise and suggested doing some other activities or just relaxing at the house with her other friends, but she kept insisting that I needed to embrace the experience like everyone else. During the trip, things escalated. Emily got drunk and started being verbally aggressive toward me in front of the other bridesmaids. She mocked my anxiety, told me I was ruining the vibe of the trip, and said I was always so boring. At one point, she even threw one of my belongings into the pool while yelling at me. Greg intervened and tried to calm her down, but she brushed him off and continued. I ended up leaving early, feeling humiliated and frustrated. I tried to reach out to her after the trip to explain how her behavior made me feel, but she accused me of overreacting and said I was making a big deal out of nothing. Fast forward to the wedding planning. Emily insisted that I help with almost every detail, from addressing invitations to helping with seating arrangements and designing the decorations. I offered to help where I could, but I also had a full-time job that required overtime and a stressful move I was planning. Emily took my partial involvement as a personal attack and repeatedly guilt-tripped me, saying things like, "I thought you loved me. Don't you care about my big day?" It was exhausting. Every interaction with her felt like walking on eggshells, and I started dreading the wedding entirely. A few months ago, Emily sent out the final wedding invitations. I noticed my name was listed as attending, but in a weirdly minimized way. For instance, in the seating chart, I was seated at the family friends table rather than with immediate family. I brushed it off at first, thinking it was an oversight, but when I asked Greg about it, he confirmed that Emily didn't want me in the main photos or in the front row during the ceremony. That felt like a slap in the face. I confronted Emily about it, and she said, "I just don't want you making things awkward. You've been so negative this whole time." I felt blindsided because I hadn't been negative toward her outside of expressing my feelings about the bachelorette party and wedding planning. She seemed to twist every concern I had raised into a personal attack. After that conversation, I started seriously considering whether I even wanted to attend. On one hand, I love my sister and wanted to support her, but on the other hand, attending felt emotionally unsafe. I began to realize that no matter what I did, she might find a way to make me feel guilty or humiliated, and I didn't want to relive last year's nightmare in front of extended family and friends. I spoke to my parents about my concerns. They were torn. Mom said, "It's your sister's day. You should try to be there," while Dad acknowledged that Emily had been unreasonable but worried about the family fallout if I didn't attend. Ultimately, I decided to decline the wedding invitation. I wrote Emily a long letter explaining that I loved her and wanted her to be happy, but I could not attend the wedding due to the emotional toll of past events and the way she had treated me. I offered to celebrate with her privately after the wedding or help in ways that didn't involve me being present at the ceremony. When Emily read the letter, she reacted very angrily. She called me selfish, cruel, and accused me of trying to ruin her special day. She hasn't spoken to me since, and she's blocked me on social media. My parents are upset, but seem to understand my reasoning, and a few friends have told me I did the right thing by setting boundaries. Now, I can't stop replaying everything in my head. Part of me feels guilty for not being there for my sister on one of the most important days of her life. Another part of me feels relieved that I avoided a situation where I would have been humiliated again. I keep thinking that maybe I could have handled things differently. Maybe I could have gone and kept my distance or attended only certain parts, but I worry that would have still led to conflict and hurt feelings. I'm scared that refusing to attend might permanently damage my relationship with Emily, but I also know I need to prioritize my mental health. I'm sharing this here to see if I'm being unreasonable for refusing to go to my sister's wedding after everything that happened last year. AITA? AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she insulted my fiancé? I've, 32F, always been the responsible sibling in my family. I have a steady career, a stable home, and a fiancé, Tom, 34M, who I absolutely love. My younger sister, Lisa, 29F, on the other hand, has always been a free spirit, living impulsively and expecting everyone else to adjust to her plans. Growing up, my parents always made sure to balance things between us. But over the years, Lisa has gotten more assertive about getting what she wants, often at the expense of others' feelings. A few months ago, Lisa got engaged to her long-term boyfriend, Mark, 30M. From the beginning, she made it clear that she wanted an unconventional wedding and insisted on a small, intimate gathering at our family home. Our parents are out of town a lot, so I'm the one who lives in the family house now, which means the wedding location would be my responsibility. I didn't mind at first. I thought it would be a nice way to support her. I even started rearranging rooms, checking with vendors, and making sure the house could accommodate the wedding. The tension started when Lisa began dictating everything about the wedding, including my involvement. She insisted that I coordinate the catering, decorations, seating arrangements, and even make sure that certain extended family members who she doesn't get along with were seated far from the main table. I try to keep a calm, helpful attitude, but it started to feel overwhelming because I was doing most of the logistical work while she made decisions without consulting me on whether they were feasible. A few weeks ago, she dropped the biggest bomb. She told me that she didn't want Tom at the wedding planning meetings because he slows everything down and doesn't have the same taste. I was stunned. I tried to reason with her, telling her that Tom and I are a team and all major life events should involve both of us, especially since hosting a wedding is a huge responsibility. She brushed me off and said that she just doesn't feel comfortable with him around and that he makes everything about himself. I was frustrated but tried to stay calm, thinking maybe we could find a compromise. Fast forward to the week before the wedding, I was knee-deep in organizing everything: catering, seating charts, flower arrangements, and last-minute adjustments. Tom had been incredibly supportive the whole time, helping me balance my work and the wedding preparations. One evening, Lisa came over to go over final details. I was tired, stressed, and trying to get things in order, and she started criticizing small details. She said the flowers were too old-fashioned and the centerpieces were boring, and then she turned to Tom and said, "Honestly, I don't know why you're even here. You clearly have no taste and ruin everything." I froze. I felt humiliated, not just for myself, but for Tom. He didn't react aggressively, but he was visibly hurt. I couldn't believe she said that in our own home, with months of planning and effort from both of us. I asked her to leave, and she left angrily, telling me I was overreacting and that this was supposed to be my day. After that, I spent a night thinking. I realized that hosting the wedding in my home, after she insulted my fiancé and disregarded all the work Tom and I had done, would make me feel disrespected and uncomfortable the entire time. I called Lisa the next morning and told her that I could no longer host the wedding. I explained that I felt disrespected and that her comments about Tom crossed a line. I suggested she find another venue, and I even offered to help her find one. She blew up, accusing me of being selfish, ruining her wedding, and saying that I was punishing her for loving her fiancé. My parents got involved after Lisa called them, and they tried to mediate. They said I was being dramatic and that families should forgive and forget, but they also acknowledged that Lisa's comments were harsh. My friends all told me I had every right to protect my home and my relationship. Tom supported my decision, saying he didn't want to be in a situation where he was openly insulted. Since then, Lisa has barely spoken to me. She's reached out to some family members to complain about how I'm ruining her wedding, and a few relatives have subtly criticized me for not compromising. I feel torn because I don't want to escalate the conflict, but I also feel strongly that nobody has the right to insult my partner in my own home and expect me to accommodate them. AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she insulted my fiancé. Even though it's her special day, I feel like the boundary is clear, but some people keep telling me I should suck it up for family. I just don't know if I'm overreacting or if I'm standing up for myself and Tom. AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancé dictate how I raise my daughter. I, 34F, have a 7-year-old daughter, Emma. I've been raising her mostly on my own since she was 2 because her father, my ex-husband, has never been involved beyond paying some child support. I have a stable job, a supportive group of friends, and a small but close family. One of the main people in my life has always been my younger brother, Jason, 30M. He and I have always been close, even when we disagreed on things. But recently, I feel like things have escalated beyond disagreement. Jason got engaged last year to a woman named Kara, 28F. Kara is sweet enough, but she is extremely opinionated, especially about parenting. I try to tolerate it when she gives me unsolicited advice about Emma, but recently it's gotten out of hand. To give some context, Emma is a very shy, sensitive child. She struggles with large social situations and gets anxious when people push her into things she isn't ready for. I try to protect her from unnecessary stress, while also gently encouraging her to step out of her comfort zone. I've always tried to strike a balance between supporting her and giving her space. Things started to get tense a few months ago during a family weekend at my parents' house. Kara noticed that Emma didn't immediately join in a group game that all the adults were organizing. She started insisting loudly that Emma needs to learn to be more social and that I was coddling her. I explained that Emma gets overwhelmed by sudden group activities and needs a gentler approach, but Kara kept insisting I was doing it wrong. Jason didn't intervene much. He just said, she'll come around. Kara then decided to take matters into her own hands. She grabbed Emma and practically forced her into the game. Emma started crying and hid behind me. I was furious, but I tried to remain calm. I told Kara that she needed to stop and respect Emma's boundaries. Kara brushed me off and said, I'm just trying to help. You need to toughen her up. I felt like she was undermining my authority as a parent. I know I don't raise Emma in a conventional way, but she's thriving. She's happy, curious, and creative. She's not miserable or socially withdrawn. She just needs more time to warm up. I reminded Kara that forcing Emma into activities against her isn't helpful and can actually increase anxiety. Kara rolled her eyes and muttered something about how I was overprotective. Since then, every time we have family gatherings, Kara has tried to correct how I manage Emma. She critiques what I feed her, how much screen time she gets, even what clothes I let her wear. She tells me I'm too lenient or too strict depending on her mood. I've tried to have calm conversations with her about boundaries, explaining that Emma's needs are different from other children and that I'm not asking her to parent Emma, but she doesn't seem to listen. Jason, for his part, is usually quiet. Sometimes he defends me, but other times he seems to side with Kara, saying things like, well, she's just trying to help. The breaking point came last week. I had scheduled a small birthday party for Emma with a few close friends. I asked Kara not to plan any activities or bring any games because I wanted it to be intimate and tailored to Emma's comfort level. When I arrived at the party, Kara had brought a whole set of organized games, a loud playlist, and decorations that were clearly overstimulating for Emma. Emma immediately became anxious and refused to participate. I told Kara several times to let Emma decide what she wanted to do, but she kept insisting, raising her voice when Emma didn't comply. At that point, I physically removed Emma from the room and told Kara she was overstepping and had to leave. She argued with me in front of the children, and Jason finally intervened, saying, maybe we can all just calm down. Kara stormed out, and Jason was visibly upset, but didn't stop me from leaving with Emma. Since then, things have been tense in the family. My parents are caught in the middle, and Jason has been texting me about how I handled things poorly and how I should consider Kara's feelings. I've tried to explain that Kara is treating Emma as if she's her own project and completely disregarding her comfort, but Jason accuses me of being defensive. He's asking me to compromise and meet Kara halfway, but I feel like compromising on my daughter's well-being is an option. I love Kara as my brother's fiancée and want her to be part of our family, but I also feel like she is overstepping in a way that could hurt Emma. I've tried being patient, explaining boundaries calmly, and asking for support from Jason, but nothing seems to work. I'm starting to wonder if I'm being unreasonable by refusing to let Kara dictate how I raise Emma. AITA for kicking Kara out of Emma's birthday party and refusing to let her interfere with my parenting. I feel like if I give an inch, she'll keep undermining me, but Jason seems to think I should be more accommodating. I don't want to ruin my relationship with my brother, but I also can't compromise on my daughter's comfort and well-being. I'm stuck between wanting a peaceful family dynamic and protecting Emma from unnecessary stress and interference. I know some might say I'm being controlling, but I honestly feel like Kara's insistence on pushing Emma beyond her limits isn't just unwanted, it's harmful. I'm open to advice, but I want to be clear that Emma's needs come first. Has anyone dealt with a situation where a family member's partner consistently undermines your parenting? How do you set firm boundaries without causing permanent family rifts? I'm desperate for a solution that protects my daughter but doesn't completely alienate my brother. I want to maintain our bond, but I also can't let Kara dictate how Emma lives her childhood. So, AITA? AITA for confronting my sister about her parenting choices? AITA for confronting my sister about her parenting choices, even though it caused a huge family rift? This has been weighing on me for months, and I really need an outside perspective because my family is taking sides, and I don't know if I overstepped or if I'm justified. I, 32F, have a younger sister, Emily, 28F, who has a 6-year-old daughter, Lily. Growing up, Emily and I were close, though our personalities are very different. I've always been the cautious, rule-following sibling, and she's much more spontaneous and carefree. Emily has always been adventurous in ways I sometimes worry about, but I tried not to interfere too much when she became a parent. Lily is a bright, sweet child, but over the past couple of years, I've noticed some concerning patterns in how Emily handles her. I know parenting styles differ, but what I've seen feels more neglectful than just a different approach. For example, Emily often lets Lily watch extremely violent or scary shows for her age. Not just cartoons with a little action, but shows with intense fighting, gore, or horror themes. I brought this up casually before, saying, hey, maybe Lily is a little young for that, but Emily laughs it off, saying Lily can handle it. Recently, Lily started having nightmares almost every night and sometimes wets the bed, which is very unusual for her. I can't help but think the shows are contributing to her anxiety, but Emily refuses to acknowledge it. Another issue is Emily's lax approach to meals and bedtime. Lily often skips meals or eats junk food because Emily is too busy or doesn't want to fight with her. Bedtimes are often very late, sometimes 11 p.m. or midnight, even on school nights. Lily is exhausted in the mornings and has been struggling academically because of it. I've suggested she try structured routines, healthy meals, and earlier bedtimes, but Emily brushes it off, saying she wants Lily to have a happy, free childhood. It's not just lifestyle choices. I've also noticed Emily struggles with consistency and discipline. If Lily misbehaves, Emily either ignores it or overreacts with yelling or threats, then immediately gives in with gifts to calm her down. I understand children need love and fun, but this pattern seems to confuse Lily and set her up for behavioral problems. For months, I've tried to stay in my lane. I visit Emily and Lily occasionally, and I try to spend one-on-one time with Lily, teaching her about healthy habits, manners, and emotional regulation. Emily has always been defensive whenever I offer advice, but I thought it was better to maintain a peaceful relationship than to push too hard. The breaking point came 2 weeks ago. I went to Emily's house to babysit Lily for a few hours while Emily ran errands. During that time, Lily brought up some things that worried me. She told me that sometimes she feels scared at home, that she misses having a bedtime routine, and that she wants her mom to play more structured games instead of just letting her watch TV all day. It broke my heart to hear her say that, and I realized the problem wasn't going away. When Emily returned, I decided to finally confront her directly. I explained that I was concerned about Lily's emotional and physical well-being, and I outlined the issues I had observed: excessive violent content, irregular sleep and meal schedules, inconsistent discipline, and lack of routine. I emphasized that I was coming from a place of love, not judgment, and that I only wanted to help Lily thrive. Emily immediately became defensive. She accused me of trying to control her parenting and said that Lily was perfectly happy. She told me that I was overreacting and that I should mind my own business. Things escalated quickly, and I said some things I probably shouldn't have, like that Lily's current struggles could be traced back to Emily's lack of structure and boundaries. Emily stormed out of the room, and we haven't spoken much since. Since then, the situation has created a huge divide in the family. My parents have been telling me I went too far and that Emily has the right to raise her child as she sees fit. They say I should have kept my concerns private or waited until Lily is older. Some friends and distant relatives, however, think I was right to speak up because Lily's safety and emotional health are at stake. Emily has started limiting my contact with Lily. She tells me I'm too negative around her and that I'm trying to undermine her authority as a mother. Lily asks me why we aren't spending as much time together anymore, which makes me feel guilty and sad. I feel torn because I genuinely care about Emily and Lily, but I also can't ignore the fact that some of Emily's choices seem harmful to her daughter. I keep going over it in my head. On one hand, I could have tried to approach Emily more subtly or waited for a professional to intervene. On the other hand, I feel like these problems aren't going to improve without someone stepping in. I don't want to create more tension, but I also don't want to stay silent while Lily potentially suffers. So AITA for confronting my sister about her parenting choices, knowing it caused a rift in the family? I feel like I did it out of genuine concern for Lily, but my family seems divided on whether I overstepped. I'm aware I might have been too blunt or harsh, and I regret escalating the confrontation, but I can't shake the feeling that staying quiet would have been worse. I just don't know where to go from here. Should I try to reconcile with Emily, even if she doesn't change her ways? Or did I do the right thing by standing up for Lily, even if it hurt our relationship? I'm really struggling with guilt, frustration, and sadness, and I need some perspective. AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she insulted my home and family. I, 32F, have always prided myself on creating a warm and welcoming home. I live in a modest but comfortable house in a quiet neighborhood, and I love decorating it myself. I enjoy hosting family gatherings and dinners, and over the years, I've had many friends and relatives tell me how cozy and inviting my home feels. I live with my partner, Tom, 34M, and our 2 cats. We aren't wealthy, but we're careful with our money and make our home a place we genuinely enjoy. My younger sister, Emily, 28F, is very different. She's extravagant, high maintenance, and has always liked to live in the spotlight. Growing up, she often made comments about our family being boring or basic. Our parents, who are retired and live nearby, often joke about it, but it has caused tension between us over the years. Despite this, I always try to be supportive of her, especially when she got engaged last year. When Emily got engaged to her fiancé, Mark, 30M, she immediately started planning a huge wedding. She wants it to be the event of the decade, according to her, and she's very particular about every detail. She initially told me she wanted my house to host a rehearsal dinner because it's cozy and everyone loves your style. I was flattered but also hesitant. My home is lovely, but it's not huge, and I have 2 cats who don't enjoy crowds. I explained this to her, offering to host a small gathering instead, maybe a pre-rehearsal brunch or cocktail hour, which would be easier for everyone and wouldn't overwhelm my house. Emily did not take this well. She told me that if I didn't host a rehearsal dinner in my house, I was ruining the wedding vibe and letting everyone down. She then started criticizing my home. She said it was cluttered, too small for anyone to move around comfortably, and even compared it unfavorably to Mark's parents' house, which she claimed was so much classier and more photogenic. She went on about how our furniture was outdated, the paint color was depressing, and that the kitchen looked like a rental. I was shocked and hurt. I've always taken pride in my home and my ability to make guests feel welcome. I tried to reason with her, explaining that I understood she wanted something glamorous, but my home was what it was, and it wasn't suitable for a big rehearsal dinner with 20 or more people. I reminded her that hosting a huge, fancy event in a home that isn't designed for it would be stressful for me, and it could risk the comfort and safety of our guests. Instead of understanding, Emily accused me of being selfish and jealous. She claimed I was too proud of my small, cozy home to admit it wasn't up to her standards. She told me that if I really cared about her happiness, I would make sacrifices. Mark backed her up, saying it would be the perfect backdrop for photos and that it wouldn't be that hard to make it work. I felt cornered, but I also knew that this would be exhausting and stressful, not to mention damaging to my relationship with my partner if he had to deal with a large crowd in our tiny house. After a lot of thinking, I told Emily and Mark that I could not host the rehearsal dinner in my home. I offered alternatives. We could rent a small venue, hold it at a restaurant, or even have it in our parents' backyard, which is bigger and could accommodate everyone comfortably. I also offered to help with decorations and planning so that it would still feel personal and special. Emily exploded. She accused me of being dramatic and petty, saying I was letting my cats and comfort dictate her wedding, and that I was turning into our parents, always putting obstacles in her way. She then started bringing up unrelated issues from our past, claiming that I had always been the favorite child, and that I didn't understand what it meant to really celebrate someone. The fight escalated, and eventually, she told me not to expect to be included in any wedding-related events anymore if I didn't comply. She even posted on social media complaining that I was the difficult sister who ruined the rehearsal dinner plans, without mentioning the context of her insults about my home. My parents have tried to mediate, telling me that Emily is stressed and that I should try to make her happy. My partner, Tom, fully supports my decision, saying that our home is our sanctuary and that no one has the right to make us feel bad about it. Even some extended family members have expressed that Emily went too far with her comments about my home and that my refusal is reasonable. However, some people in our family think I'm being stubborn and that I should just let her use my home, even if it means rearranging furniture and dealing with a crowd I'm uncomfortable with. They argue that it's just one night, and it would mean a lot to Emily. I understand this perspective, but I feel like Emily crossed a line by insulting my home and expecting me to put up with her criticism just to accommodate her vision. Since then, our relationship has been tense. Emily has stopped speaking to me directly, and I've only seen passive-aggressive comments online. I feel hurt, stressed, and guilty because I don't want to cause a family rift, but I also feel like I shouldn't have to sacrifice my comfort and be insulted in my own home just to make someone else happy. AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding rehearsal dinner after she criticized my home and family? Or should I just give in to keep the peace? AITA for refusing to help my sister with her wedding after she refused to include my boyfriend? So, I, 28F, have a younger sister, Emily, 25F, who is getting married this summer. Our family has always been close, though admittedly, Emily and I have very different personalities. I'm more laid back and introverted, while she's very outgoing and a bit of a perfectionist. Over the years, this has caused some tension, but nothing unmanageable. Until now. About 2 years ago, I started dating someone named Alex, 30M. He's an amazing person, and we've been very happy together. He gets along with my friends and family, and I genuinely thought he'd get along with Emily too. I tried to introduce them casually at first, during a small family dinner. Emily was polite, but barely acknowledged him. I didn't think much of it at the time. Fast forward to the wedding planning. Emily and her fiancé, Ryan, 27M, had asked me to be involved in the planning, which I was excited about. I had ideas for decorations, music, and even helped research venues. Everything seemed fine until Emily revealed her guest list to me. She mentioned that she wasn't planning to invite Alex. I was shocked and asked why. She said she didn't feel comfortable having him at the wedding because she didn't feel like he fits with the family and that she wasn't interested in introducing him to her friends. I tried to explain that it hurt my feelings because I would like to share one of the most important days of my life with the person I love. I also said it wasn't fair to exclude him when he has been an integral part of my life for the past 2 years. Emily responded by saying that the wedding was about her and Ryan, not about me, and that it was their day, and she had the right to control the guest list. She also mentioned that my boyfriend makes her uncomfortable and that she doesn't want him there. I was upset, but I tried to compromise. I suggested that maybe Alex could attend the reception only or meet some of her close friends briefly. Emily refused firmly, saying it was non-negotiable. I then asked if we could at least not have him excluded entirely from all pre-wedding events like the bridal shower or engagement party. She said no, she didn't want him involved in any wedding-related activities. After this, I felt incredibly hurt and frustrated. I don't like being forced to choose between my relationship and my family, and it seemed like Emily was demanding I accept her conditions or be left out entirely. I decided to step back from helping with the wedding. I told Emily that while I wanted to support her, I couldn't participate fully if Alex wasn't allowed to be included at all. She was furious, claiming that I was being dramatic and selfish. She accused me of trying to force her to invite him, which I didn't think was fair. My parents have been involved as well, trying to mediate. They've been urging me to compromise and just attend without making a fuss. I explained to them that it wasn't about making a fuss. It's about not being made to feel like my relationship is unwelcome and being told that my boyfriend doesn't belong around my family. They understand to some extent, but they're also worried about the tension ruining the wedding. I haven't been helping with any planning since then. Emily is now angry at me and has been sending passive-aggressive texts about how disappointed she is and how I'm being immature. She even implied that I might not be invited to the wedding at all if I continue to refuse to help. I feel that I've been put in an impossible position. I love my sister and want her to have a beautiful wedding, but I can't be involved if it means pretending that my boyfriend doesn't exist in my life. Some of my friends have told me I'm being stubborn and that I should just let her have her day. Others have said that Emily's behavior is unreasonable and exclusionary. I'm conflicted because I do not want to ruin her wedding, but I also don't want to compromise my relationship or my sense of self-respect. So, AITA for refusing to help with my sister's wedding because she won't include my boyfriend? For context, Alex has been supportive of me stepping back from the wedding planning, though he's sad he won't be part of it. My parents think I should bite the bullet and help anyway. Emily's fiancé, Ryan, is largely staying out of it and has told me he doesn't want to get involved in the drama, which makes me feel even more isolated. I have considered attending the wedding without helping, but I feel that might make the situation more tense. I also worry that if I attend, Emily will make it uncomfortable for both me and Alex. On the other hand, if I don't attend at all, I feel like I'm missing an important milestone in my sister's life. Some additional context. Alex has never been disrespectful. He doesn't have any issues with family, and he gets along with most people. The only reason Emily doesn't want him there seems to be based on her perception and discomfort, not any behavior on his part. I've tried multiple times to discuss this calmly with her, but she refuses to budge. I'm reaching out because I need an honest perspective. Am I being unreasonable for wanting my partner to be included, or is Emily being unfair by excluding him entirely? I feel trapped in a situation where either choice feels like I'm betraying someone I care about. AITA for confronting my sister about how she treats my kids? I, 37F, have 2 children, Ella, 9, and Max, 6, and I've always tried to maintain a healthy relationship with my extended family, particularly my younger sister, Rachel, 33F. Rachel has always been a bit opinionated and tends to have strong views about parenting, but I never thought it was worth making a big deal out of until recently. Over the past few years, my sister has been visiting my home more frequently. At first, it was occasional dinners or weekend visits, which were fine. But over the last year, she's started dropping by unannounced, often staying for several hours. I've tried to be polite, but it's become stressful because she's not just visiting. She's taking over whenever she's around. The main issue is how she interacts with my kids. Rachel has a very strict idea of how children should behave and what they should do at certain ages. She constantly criticizes their choices, their eating habits, and even the way I discipline them. For example, Ella loves drawing and painting, but Rachel insists that she should spend more time on academics or structure activities. Max has ADHD, and I've worked with him to manage his energy and attention, but Rachel will publicly scold him for misbehaving or not sitting still long enough. She often says things like, "I don't understand why you let him act like that," or "If you were stricter, he would behave better." I've tried to set boundaries, like telling Rachel she needs to ask before imposing activities or giving unsolicited advice. She nods and promises to respect my parenting choices, but then she goes right back to doing exactly what she wants whenever she's here. The breaking point came last weekend. Rachel came over unannounced again, and this time she brought her fiancé, who is relatively quiet and seemed to follow her lead. I had plans to spend the afternoon baking with Ella and helping Max with a science project. As soon as they arrived, Rachel started rearranging the kitchen, telling Ella she should be doing her homework instead of baking, and taking over Max's project by handing him worksheets and instructing him on what to do. When I intervened, Rachel said, "I just want to help. You're too lenient, and they need guidance." I told her firmly that I had plans with my kids and that she was overstepping. Instead of apologizing, she got defensive, saying that I was overreacting and that my kids would thank me later for letting her correct them. I lost my temper and told her she was disrespecting both me and my children. Ella was upset and cried because Rachel told her she was wasting her time on silly hobbies. Max got frustrated and started crying too because he didn't understand why someone was yelling at him for trying to do something fun. Rachel left after an hour, but she's been texting me since then, accusing me of being controlling and saying I embarrassed her in front of her fiancé. Our parents are also involved, though indirectly. They say I should let her be helpful and that Rachel's intentions are good, but I feel like they're dismissing my concerns. My husband supports me completely and agrees that Rachel's behavior is overbearing, but he also wants to avoid family drama. I'm feeling torn. On one hand, I want to maintain a relationship with my sister because I love her and want my kids to have a good relationship with her. On the other hand, I feel like her constant criticism and interference are harming my children's confidence and my own sense of control as a parent. I've considered writing a detailed message explaining boundaries and expectations before any future visits, but I worry it might escalate the tension. I can't help but feel that defending my parenting choices isn't being controlling. It's protecting my children. But my sister insists that I'm overreacting and that she's just trying to help. I've also worried about how this might affect my kids long term, especially Ella, who is sensitive to criticism, and Max, who needs patience and understanding more than strictness. Am I the asshole for confronting my sister and standing firm about how she interacts with my kids, even though I upset her? I feel like if I don't set these boundaries now, it will continue and possibly get worse. I also wonder if I could have handled it differently or if my reaction was too harsh. I should also mention that Rachel has a history of being very critical in general. She's smart and successful, but she can be very blunt. And while she's never intended to hurt me personally, she seems to forget that my children are not adults and need encouragement rather than constant correction. I love them dearly and want them to feel safe and confident in their own home. This has been weighing heavily on me. I'm exhausted from trying to be diplomatic while also trying to shield my kids from what I see as unnecessary negativity. I know family can be complicated, and I'm open to suggestions for ways to maintain a relationship without letting her undermine my parenting. But I can't ignore how stressed and upset this situation has made me and my children. So, Reddit AITA for confronting my sister about her behavior and trying to set boundaries, even though it made her feel embarrassed and upset? Or should I just let her help and endure the stress for the sake of family harmony? Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.